This is it. The final chapter. Katie's in the hands of enemies who know far too much. Lorenzo's about to discover that his most trusted ally has been playing a deadly game all along. And when betrayal reveals itself, nothing, not armies, not empires, not even death itself, will stop him from bringing her home. If you missed episodes 1 or 2, the links are in the description below. Trust me, you'll want the full journey to feel the weight of what's about to happen. Before we dive in, real talk. My mum bet me I couldn't get 1,000 subscribers by the end of tomorrow. She thinks I'm dreaming too big with these stories, that if you're already hooked on Katie and Lorenzo, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Let's prove her wrong together and show what this community can do. Fire and drop a quick comment. Where are you watching from? Your bed? A cafe? Late night binge session? Let me know. Globe showing Europe, Africa. All right, let's get back to the story. Katie woke with a pounding headache and the metallic taste of fear in her mouth. For a few disorienting seconds, she couldn't remember where she was. Her wrists burned. Her neck throbbed where the needle had pierced her skin. Her mouth felt like cotton. She blinked slowly, vision sharpening. Concrete walls. A single flickering bulb overhead. A heavy metal door with no handle on the inside. And her, tied to a metal chair in the center of a cold, gray room. Her heart raced as memory flooded back. The ambush. The masked men. Min-jae reaching for her. The van door slamming. She pulled against the ropes binding her wrists behind the chair. They were tight, professional. Whoever tied her knew what they were doing. Hello, she called out, voice hoarse. Is anyone there? Silence. Then footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Multiple sets approaching from somewhere beyond the door. Katie's breathing quickened. She forced herself to stay calm, to think. Lorenzo would know she was missing by now. Min-jae would have told him. They'd be looking for her. Unless. The door opened with a metallic groan. A tall man in an expensive suit walked in, smiling like he was greeting a guest at a dinner party. His eyes were cold, calculating, predatory. Katie recognized him immediately from the photos Min-jae had shown her during briefings at the estate. Hwang Do-sik. Well, Do-sik said in smooth, practiced English with a faint Korean accent. Katie Williams. The American tourist who became a very interesting problem. Katie's throat was dry, but she forced herself to speak. Why are you doing this? Do-sik walked in a slow circle around her chair, hands clasped behind his back like a professor examining a curious specimen. Because Kong Lorenzo Key is careful, disciplined, hard to manipulate, hard to break. He paused directly in front of her. But you're easy. I don't know anything, Katie said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm not part of this world. Oh, but you are, Do-sik said, crouching down to her eye level. Your father used to work for companies that laundered my money. Money that vanished when certain accounts were frozen. Money that Lorenzo now controls through his so-called legitimate businesses. His smile widened. And then you appeared beside him like a gift from the universe itself. Katie's stomach twisted. That's not true. My father didn't. Your father was a small player in a much larger game, Do-sik interrupted. But his name appears in documents. His signature approved transactions. Whether he knew what he was doing or not doesn't matter. What matters is the connection. He stood. And you have value beyond your father's sins. What value? Katie asked, though she already feared the answer. Do-sik gestured to the door. As a message. As leverage. As pain. Footsteps echoed in the hallway again. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Katie's breath caught in her throat. Park Min-jae stepped into the light. Katie's blood turned to ice. The man who had escorted her through Seoul, protected her at the estate, stood at Lorenzo's side every single day. The man who'd reached for her as she was dragged from the SUV, blood streaming down his face, screaming her name. He was standing in Do-sik's compound, hands in his pockets, perfectly clean. No blood, no injuries, no sign of the desperate struggle she'd witnessed. It had all been an act. You, Katie whispered, unable to form more words. Min-jae sighed, like she was being unnecessarily dramatic. Hello, Katie. Katie stared at him, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. You betrayed him. Min-jae shrugged with infuriating casualness. Let's not use such heavy words. Betrayal sounds so personal. Do-sik chuckled, clearly amused. I prefer strategic reallocation of loyalty. Katie pulled violently against the ropes, ignoring the pain shooting through her wrists. Why are you doing this? Lorenzo trusted you. Min-jae's expression flickered, something dark passing through his eyes. He doesn't trust anyone. Not really. He gives orders. He expects obedience. Trust. He laughed bitterly. That's an illusion he uses to keep people close. That's not true, Katie shot back, anger overriding fear. He trusted you. He put his life in your hands every single day. Then he's dumber than I thought, Min-jae said coldly. Do-sik crossed his arms, watching their exchange with interest. Min-jae here realized something I figured out a long time ago. Lorenzo is dangerous, yes. Powerful, certainly. But he's predictable. He plays by rules even when he pretends not to. And that makes him weak. You lied to him, Katie said, voice shaking with rage. You made him think I betrayed him. Min-jae tilted his head, studying her. I didn't frame you for fun, Katie. I framed you because it was efficient. You were already close to him. You already mattered. So when the moment came, all I had to do was plant a little seed of doubt. He smiled. And he believed it immediately. And he pushed you away, Do-sik added with satisfaction. Sent you straight into our hands with a nice little security escort. If he'd had any real sense, he would have kept you locked in his bedroom where we couldn't reach you. But he didn't trust you enough. Katie shook her head, tears burning her eyes. He was scared. He didn't want me hurt. Do-sik laughed softly. A scared man makes stupid decisions. That's why he's losing. That's why you're here. Min-jae moved closer, lowering his voice. Lorenzo always thought he could rise above the dirt. Cut deals. Clean the blood off his hands. Create some picture-perfect empire where he's respected instead of feared. He tapped his temple. But he forgot what keeps men like him in power. Fear. Not love. Not loyalty. Fear. Katie glared at him through her tears. You talk about fear, but you were terrified of him. I saw it every single time he looked at you. Min-jae's smile faltered for half a second. Then he straightened, expression hardening. Fear keeps people alive. But Lorenzo lost his edge the moment he met you. He pointed at her. You soft-hearted him. Katie froze. Min-jae's smile returned, colder now. I could see it the moment he started looking at you differently. Something changed. He started hesitating, doubting, second-guessing his instincts, protecting. He leaned closer. And that's when I realized the fastest way to destroy Kong Lorenzo Ki wasn't through war or politics or rival families. He gestured at her with mock reverence. It was through you. Katie wanted to spit at him. You're a coward. Min-jae shrugged. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. Do-sik clapped his hands once, breaking the tension. Enough emotional conversation. We have business to attend to. Min-jae nodded and stepped back. Do-sik crouched in front of Katie again, his smile never reaching his eyes. You are going to help me end Lorenzo's little empire. Not willingly, of course. But help me you will. Katie clenched her jaw. I won't tell you anything about him. Oh, Katie. Do-sik laughed, genuinely amused. You don't know anything about Lorenzo that I don't already know. His businesses, his properties, his weaknesses. I have files on all of it. He stood and signaled to a guard standing just outside the door. Take her to the holding room. Keep her awake. No more sedatives. I want her alert when Lorenzo arrives. Katie struggled against the ropes as rough hands grabbed her chair. Let me go. Do-sik didn't even look at her. When Lorenzo realizes you're gone, truly gone, not just moved to another safe house, he will come looking. And that's when you become useful. Min-jae stepped forward, his expression slightly harder now. Be careful with her. If she's injured too badly before he arrives, Lorenzo will see the message wrong. We want him desperate, not blind with rage. The guard nodded. Do-sik smirked. Worried she won't look pretty enough for the reunion? Min-jae didn't react. Katie was dragged out of the room, the metal legs of her chair scraping against concrete. She fought, kicked, twisted, but the guard was strong and the ropes cut deeper into her wrists with every movement. Do-sik's voice called after her, echoing down the corridor. Don't worry, Katie. Your boyfriend is on his way. We made sure he'd find the breadcrumbs. The words followed her like poison. Back at the estate, Lorenzo was a man coming apart at the seams. His jaw was bruised from the moment he'd punched a reinforced wall so hard his knuckles split open. His voice was raw from shouting orders at his remaining guards. His hands trembled when no one was looking. Not from fear, but from rage so white-hot it threatened to consume him entirely. He paced his office like a caged predator, staring at blood-stained gravel in the photograph his tech team had sent from the attack site. Marco, one of Lorenzo's oldest and most trusted guards, stood near the doorway, watching his boss unravel with growing concern. Katie was taken 4 hours ago, Marco said quietly, voice steady despite the tension. We found shell casings at the scene. They match weapons supplied by Dusic's usual contacts. Lorenzo's voice was hoarse, barely controlled. Why wasn't I called the second the route was changed? Marco hesitated, exchanging a glance with Luis, another guard standing nearby. Because Min-jae changed the route, boss. He said it was for security reasons, avoiding main roads, taking back routes through the mountains. Lorenzo spun toward him, every muscle in his body turning to steel. Min-jae what? Marco swallowed hard. Min-jae switched the vehicles and the route about 30 minutes before departure. He said you'd approved it. We tried to reach him after the attack to confirm Katie's status, but where is he now? Lorenzo asked, voice dropping into that deadly calm that made grown men take a step back. We can't reach him, boss, Luis said. His phone's off. His tracker's been disabled. He's gone. The world went silent. Lorenzo's pulse hammered in his ears. The betrayal slammed into him with brutal, undeniable clarity. Min-jae, his right hand for over 7 years. The man who'd stood beside him through gang wars, family coups, police raids, and political scandals. The one person he'd trusted with his life. The one person he'd trusted with Katie. And Min-jae had betrayed him. Min-jae had framed Katie with that fabricated data leak. Min-jae had convinced Lorenzo to doubt her. Min-jae had orchestrated her removal from the estate. And Min-jae had delivered her straight into enemy hands. Lorenzo pressed both hands flat on the desk, head bowed, breathing hard. He whispered, voice breaking, "This is my fault." Marco stepped forward. "Boss, I sent her away." Lorenzo's voice cracked. "I looked at her like she was a threat. I made her think I didn't trust her. And then I put her in his hands." Marco didn't answer. There was nothing he could say. Lorenzo straightened slowly. When he lifted his head, the man who turned around wasn't the one Katie had kissed by the fire. It was the coldest, most dangerous version of Kong Lorenzo Key. Dead calm. Eyes like black ice. No hesitation. No mercy left. "Get me every file on Min-jae's movements for the last 6 months," Lorenzo said, voice like gravel. "Every call. Every transfer. Every message. Every place he went when he thought I wasn't watching. I want every connection he's made, every deal he's touched, every person he's spoken to." "Yes, boss," Marco said immediately. "And assemble a team," Lorenzo added. "I want our best. No one green. No one hesitant. Only people who'll burn the world down if I tell them to." Marco nodded. "How many?" 15. Fully armed. Full tactical gear. We leave in 2 hours. Luis stepped forward. "Boss, where are we going?" "Do 6 strongholds," Lorenzo said coldly. "All of them." Marco's eyes widened slightly. "That'll start a war." Lorenzo's voice dropped, colder than winter. "He took something from me. I'm not starting a war. I'm ending one." "Okay, pause for just a second." Min-jae betrayed Lorenzo. Katie's in enemy hands. And Lorenzo's about to unleash absolute hell to get her back. If you're as hooked as I am, subscribe now so you don't miss how this explosive finale ends. Drop a comment. Do you think Lorenzo will get to Katie in time? And what should happen to Min-jae? Let me know. Backhand index pointing down. Now let's see what Katie's doing while Lorenzo prepares for war. Katie sat in the holding room. For cement walls, a metal chair bolted to the floor, a single flickering fluorescent light overhead casting sickly shadows. Her hands were still tied behind her back. Her legs were bound to the chair legs with zip ties that bit into her ankles. Each breath hurt, but she forced herself to stay calm. Stay alert. Stay alive. She replayed Min-jae's words in her head, over and over. He believed it immediately. He pushed you away. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. But under the pain, under the fear and anger and betrayal, she whispered to herself, "He's coming." He had to be. Because last night by the fire, that wasn't casual. Not for her. And she didn't believe it was casual for him either. No matter what Min-jae said. Lorenzo had looked at her like she mattered. Like she was real. Like she was his. And men like Lorenzo didn't let go of what was theirs. Footsteps echoed outside. Metal scraped against metal. Katie tensed, preparing herself for another round with Dusick or Min-jae. But the door didn't open. Instead, voices drifted through the crack at the bottom, muffled, but just clear enough to make out words. "We need to move fast." That was Min-jae's voice, tense and urgent. "He'll figure out the location soon. Lorenzo's not stupid. Dusik's voice responded, calmer but laced with impatience. You're getting nervous, Min-jae. That's not like you. He's not stupid, Min-jae repeated, sharper this time. He knows I fed him lies about Katie. He knows I staged the data leak. By now, he's probably figured out I was the one who changed the convoy route. Katie's heart raced. He knows. Min-jae continued, voice cold and bitter. He already knows it was me. And when he comes, not if, when, I want to be the one standing in front of him. I want to watch him fall. Katie squeezed her eyes shut, pulling desperately at the ropes binding her wrists. They were tight, cutting into her skin, but not impossible. Whoever had tied her wasn't as meticulous as Min-jae would have been. There was a tiny bit of give, just enough. She worked the ropes slowly, twisting her wrists in small circles, ignoring the burning pain as the fibers scraped her skin raw. Dusik's voice drifted through again. You hate him that much? After all these years? You don't understand, Min-jae said bitterly. I stood beside him for 7 years. 7 years of watching him get credit for my strategies. 7 years of watching the family bow to him, the half-breed foreigner who didn't even grow up in Seoul, while I was treated like hired help. And yet you stayed, Dusik observed. Because I was building, Min-jae snapped. Watching, learning, waiting for the perfect moment. There was a pause, and then she walked into his life. Katie Williams. The one weakness he couldn't hide. The one thing that made him human. His voice turned venomous. That's when I knew I could finally destroy him. Katie's hands trembled as she worked the ropes faster, desperation fueling her movements. She had to get out. She had to warn Lorenzo. She had to. One of the ropes loosened. Katie froze, barely breathing. Slowly, carefully, she continued twisting her wrists. The rope slid another inch, then another, and then suddenly her right hand slipped free. Katie bit back a gasp of relief. She kept her hands behind her back, not moving, not making a sound. If the guard outside noticed, if Min-jae came back in, she forced herself to stay still and think. Her ankles were still zip-tied to the chair legs. She'd need something sharp to cut through them. But her hands were free. That was a start. The voices outside faded as footsteps moved away down the corridor. Katie waited. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then she carefully brought her hands forward, flexing her fingers to get blood flowing again. Her wrists were raw and bleeding, but she didn't care. She looked around the room desperately. There had to be something, anything she could use. Her eyes landed on the flickering fluorescent light overhead. The plastic casing was cracked, and she could see a thin metal edge where the cover had broken. Katie stood carefully, the chair still attached to her ankles, and hobbled awkwardly toward the wall directly beneath the light. She reached up, fingers straining, and managed to grip the edge of the broken casing. She pulled hard. The plastic cracked further, and a sharp piece broke off in her hand. Thin, jagged, barely 2 inches long, but sharp enough. Katie sat back down and immediately started sawing at the zip ties around her ankles. The plastic was thick, industrial grade, but the sharp edge cut slowly through the first layer. Come on, come on, come on. The zip tie on her right ankle snapped. Katie didn't waste time celebrating. She immediately attacked the left ankle tie, sawing frantically now, listening for any sound of approaching footsteps. The second tie snapped. She was free. Katie stood slowly, legs shaky from being bound for hours. She moved to the door and pressed her ear against the cold metal. Silence. She tried the handle. Locked, of course. But she was free of the chair. And if an opportunity came, when an opportunity came, she'd be ready. Katie backed away from the door and positioned herself beside it, the sharp piece of plastic gripped tightly in her hand. She whispered to herself, voice barely audible. Come find me, Lorenzo. I'll be ready. Meanwhile, 60 miles away, Lorenzo stood in the center of his armory, surrounded by 15 of his most loyal men. They were gearing up, tactical vests, weapons, communications equipment. Marco checked ammunition counts. Luis distributed earpieces. Another guard named Hiro calibrated their GPS trackers. Isabella burst into the room, her face pale with worry. You found her? No, Lorenzo said, loading his weapon with practiced efficiency. But I know where she is. How? Lorenzo held up a tablet showing a map with 3 red dots marking locations across Seoul. Min-jae made a mistake. He's been using encrypted communications, but he got lazy. One of his messages pinged off a tower near Dusik's warehouse district. Isabella stepped closer, studying the map. 3 locations, 3 possibilities, Lorenzo confirmed. Dusick owns properties at all 3 points. We're hitting all of them simultaneously. Lorenzo. Isabella grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. This is suicide. Dusick will have an army waiting. I don't care. You should care, she insisted. You're no good to Katie dead. Lorenzo finally met his sister's eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Not recklessness. Not blind rage. Cold, calculated determination. I'm not going there to die, he said quietly. I'm going there to bring her home. And anyone who stands in my way will regret it. Isabella searched his face, then slowly nodded. Then let me come with you. No. Lorenzo. If this goes wrong, he said, voice softening just slightly. Someone needs to survive. Someone needs to protect what we've built. That's you. Tears filled Isabella's eyes, but she didn't argue further. Instead, she pulled him into a fierce hug. Bring her home, little brother, and come back alive. I will, he promised. Marco approached, holding Lorenzo's tactical vest. We're ready, boss. Lorenzo pulled away from Isabella and strapped on the vest. He checked his weapons one final time. Handgun, backup piece, knife strapped to his thigh, extra ammunition. He turned to face his team. 15 men, all watching him, all ready to follow him into hell. Listen carefully, Lorenzo said, voice carrying authority. Katie Williams is in one of Dusick's facilities. We don't know which one, so we're splitting into 3 teams. 5 men per location. Marco, you take the warehouse on the east side. Luis, you take the industrial complex to the north. I'll take the shipping facility south of the river. What are the rules of engagement? Hero asked. Lorenzo's expression went ice cold. Anyone who works for Dusick is an enemy. Anyone who stands between us and Katie is a target. We're not taking prisoners. We're not negotiating. We go in hard, we extract Katie, and we eliminate threats. Marco nodded grimly. And if we find Minjae? The room went silent. Lorenzo's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. If you find Minjae, you bring him to me alive. Do you understand? Alive. He's mine. Every man in the room nodded. One more thing, Lorenzo said. Katie is the priority. Not me. Not revenge. Not pride. If you have to choose between Katie's safety and completing the mission, you choose Katie. Every single time. Is that clear? Yes, boss, they answered in unison. Lorenzo checked his watch. We leave in 5 minutes. Check your gear. Say your prayers if you have any. And remember, we're bringing her home tonight. Dusick's shipping facility was exactly what Lorenzo expected. A sprawling complex of warehouses near the Han River, surrounded by chain-link fencing topped with barbed wire, security cameras on every corner, and guards patrolling in pairs. Lorenzo and his team approached from the water, using a small boat to reach the facility's blind spot along the riverbank. They moved in silence, communicating through hand signals and earpiece clicks. Team 2 in position. Marco's voice crackled through Lorenzo's earpiece. Team 3 ready, Luis confirmed. Lorenzo crouched behind a shipping container, scanning the facility's layout through night vision binoculars. He counted at least 12 guards visible from his position, probably more inside. All teams, Lorenzo said quietly into his comm, we go on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. Chaos erupted simultaneously at all 3 facilities. Lorenzo's team moved like a well-oiled machine. 2 guards went down silently before they even knew they were under attack. The perimeter alarm didn't sound. Hero had disabled it remotely 30 seconds before they breached. Lorenzo moved through the facility with lethal efficiency, weapon raised, checking every corner. His team spread out, clearing rooms methodically. Boss, one of his men called from a corridor to the left. Found holding cells. 3 of them. 2 empty. Lorenzo's heart raced as he sprinted toward the cells. The 3rd door was reinforced steel with a small window. He looked through. Empty. Damn it, Lorenzo growled. He pressed his earpiece. Team 2, Team 3 report. Have you found her? Negative, Marco responded. Facility 2 is clear. No sign of Katie or Dusick. Team 3 checking now, Luis said. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. He'd chosen wrong. Katie wasn't here. Boss. Hero's voice came through urgent and sharp. We've got movement outside. 5 vehicles approaching fast. They know we're here. Lorenzo cursed under his breath. All teams converge on Team 3's location. Luis, hold position. We're coming to you. He sprinted back toward the entrance, his team following. They piled into their vehicles, just as Do-6 reinforcements arrived. Gunfire erupted. Lorenzo's driver floored the accelerator, tires screaming as they tore out of the facility. Bullets pinged off the armored vehicle. "Luis, we're 10 minutes out," Lorenzo said into his comm. "Do you have her?" There was a pause too long. Then Luis's voice came through, breathless. "Boss, we found her. But you need to get here now. Do-6 here. And so is Minjae." Lorenzo's blood turned to ice. "Is she alive?" "Yes. But boss, they're using her as bait. They knew we'd come." Lorenzo's hands clenched into fists. "Hold your position. I'm coming." He leaned forward to the driver. "Faster." At the industrial complex, Katie heard the explosions before she saw anything. The entire building shook. Alarms blared. Guards shouted and ran past her door. Katie pressed herself against the wall beside the door, still gripping the sharp piece of plastic, heart pounding. This was it. Lorenzo was here. The door burst open. A guard rushed in, weapon drawn. But he wasn't expecting her to be free. Katie lunged forward and drove the plastic shard into his arm. He screamed and dropped his weapon. Katie grabbed the gun, awkward, heavy, unfamiliar, and backed away. The guard clutched his bleeding arm, staring at her in shock. "Where is Lorenzo?" Katie demanded, voice shaking but determined. The guard didn't answer. Katie raised the gun with trembling hands. "Where is he?" Before the guard could respond, someone clapped slowly from the doorway. Do-6 stepped into the room, flanked by 4 armed men. Minjae stood just behind him, expression unreadable. "Well done, Katie," Do-6 said, genuinely impressed. "You're more resourceful than I gave you credit for." Katie kept the gun raised, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely aim. "Stay back." Do-6 smiled. "You won't shoot me. You've never fired a weapon in your life." "Try me," Katie said, but her voice cracked. Minjae stepped forward, hands raised. "Katie, put the gun down. You're only going to get yourself killed." "Stay away from me," Katie hissed. "You lied to him. You made him think I betrayed him." "I did what I had to do," Minjae said coldly. Another explosion rocked the building. Closer this time. Do-6's expression hardened. "Time to move. Bring her." 2 guards moved toward Katie. She pulled the trigger. The gun clicked. Empty. Katie's heart sank as the guards grabbed her roughly, wrenching the useless weapon from her hands. One of them twisted her arm behind her back, making her cry out in pain. "Don't hurt her too much," Do-6 said casually. "We need her conscious for the reunion." They dragged Katie out of the holding room and down a corridor filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. She could hear gunfire echoing from somewhere above them. Lorenzo was close. She could feel it. They emerged into a large warehouse space. Open, with metal catwalks overhead and shipping containers stacked 3 high along the walls. Do-6 positioned Katie in the center of the space, forcing her into a chair. Minjae personally tied her hands behind her back again, pulling the ropes tight. "He's coming," Minjae said quietly, almost to himself. "Any minute now." Do-6 checked his weapon and positioned his men strategically around the warehouse. "Good. Let him come. This ends tonight." Katie struggled against the ropes. "Lorenzo will kill you." Do-6 laughed. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he'll be too distracted watching you die to save himself." Before Katie could respond, the warehouse doors exploded inward. Lorenzo barreled through with 4 of his men, weapons raised, eyes burning like hellfire. He saw Katie tied to the chair in the center of the warehouse. He saw Do-6 standing behind her with a gun, and something inside him snapped so violently it showed in his voice. "Let her go." Do-6 pressed the barrel of his gun against Katie's temple. "There he is. Right on time." Katie's breath came in short gasps. "Lorenzo, don't. Don't move," Lorenzo said, eyes locked on hers. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled with barely contained rage. "Katie, look at me. Just look at me." She did. And despite everything, the fear, the danger, the gun pressed to her head, she felt safer just seeing him. Do-6 tightened his grip on Katie's shoulder. "Here's how this works, Lorenzo. You walk away right now, and maybe I let her live. Maybe I even let her go eventually. But if you take one more step..." "I'm not walking away from her," Lorenzo interrupted, voice like steel. Minjae stepped forward from the shadows, positioning himself beside Do-6. "You should, boss. You still can. Cut your losses. Build another empire. Find another woman." Lorenzo's eyes finally shifted to Minjae, and the betrayal and fury in his gaze could have burned cities. 7 years, Lorenzo said quietly. I trusted you for 7 years. Min-jae's expression hardened. And I stood in your shadow for 7 years. Watching you play kingmaker while I did the real work. Watching everyone bow to you, the mixed-blood outsider, while I was nothing but your weapon. You were my brother, Lorenzo said, voice breaking just slightly. I was your dog, Min-jae spat. And I'm done. Lorenzo took one slow step forward. Then this is where it ends. Do-sik pulled back the hammer on his gun. One more step and she dies. Lorenzo stopped. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to explode into violence, but he stopped. Katie's heart raced. She could see Lorenzo calculating, measuring distances, looking for an opening. She made a decision. If she was going to die, she wasn't going to die sitting in a chair while Lorenzo watched helplessly. She threw herself sideways with every ounce of strength she had. The chair toppled. Do-sik's aim jerked off target. A gunshot exploded through the warehouse. Katie hit the concrete floor hard, still tied to the chair. Pain radiated through her shoulder, sharp, burning, spreading fast. She'd been hit. Lorenzo's roar of rage shook the warehouse. He lunged forward with terrifying speed, firing as he moved. Do-sik's men returned fire, but Lorenzo was a force of nature. Unstoppable, lethal, moving with precision born from years of surviving impossible situations. Marco and the rest of Lorenzo's team poured into the warehouse, engaging Do-sik's guards. The space erupted into chaos, gunfire, shouting, the metallic clang of bullets hitting shipping containers. Lorenzo reached Katie in seconds. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands moving over her frantically, assessing the wound. Katie, look at me. Stay with me. Her vision was blurring, but she managed to focus on his face. I knew you'd come. Of course I came, he said, voice breaking. Of course I did. Blood spread across her shoulder, soaking through her shirt. Lorenzo ripped off his tactical vest and pressed it against the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice raw. I'm so sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I let him convince me. I'm sorry I sent you away. Lorenzo, Katie whispered, reaching up with her free hand to touch his face. It's okay. You're here now. Don't close your eyes, he commanded. Stay awake. Do you hear me? Stay awake. Behind them, the gunfire was dying down. Lorenzo's team had neutralized most of Do-sik's guards. But Min-jae and Do-sik were nowhere to be seen. Boss! Marco shouted from across the warehouse. They're escaping through the back. Lorenzo looked torn. Stay with Katie or pursue the men who'd done this to her. Katie made the choice for him. Go, she whispered. Finish it. I'm not leaving you. Marco will stay with me, she said, her voice getting weaker. Go finish this. Please. Lorenzo hesitated for one more second, then kissed her forehead hard. Don't you dare die. Do you understand me? Don't you dare. He stood and sprinted after Min-jae and Do-sik, rage and grief fueling every step. Marco knelt beside Katie, taking over, applying pressure to her wound. You're going to be okay, Miss Williams. Help is coming. Katie nodded weakly, but her vision was fading to black. The last thing she heard was the sound of gunfire echoing in the distance. Lorenzo chased Min-jae and Do-sik through the industrial complex, through corridors, down metal staircases, out into the loading area where vehicles were parked. Do-sik was already in a car, engine roaring to life. But Min-jae stood beside the vehicle, weapon raised, waiting. Lorenzo skidded to a stop 20 feet away, both men aiming at each other. It didn't have to be this way, Lorenzo said. Yes, it did, Min-jae replied. You just couldn't see it. I gave you everything, Lorenzo said. Respect. Power. A place at my side. You gave me scraps, Min-jae said bitterly. And you made me grateful for them. They stood in silence for a moment, weapons trained on each other. 7 years of brotherhood crumbling into dust. If you pull that trigger, Lorenzo said quietly, one of us dies here. Maybe both of us. Is that really what you want? Min-jae's hand trembled slightly. For just a moment, Lorenzo saw hesitation. Then Do-sik's voice called from the car. Min-jae, we need to go now. The hesitation vanished. Min-jae pulled the trigger. So did Lorenzo. 2 shots rang out simultaneously. Min-jae stumbled backward, clutching his chest. His weapon clattered to the ground. Lorenzo staggered but stayed on his feet. Blood spread across his side where Min-jae's bullet had grazed him. Min-jae collapsed to his knees, gasping. You actually shot me. You shot me first, Lorenzo said, walking forward slowly. Dusic's car screeched away, abandoning Minjae without hesitation. Lorenzo stood over his former right-hand man, weapon still raised. Minjae looked up at him, blood spilling between his fingers. Do it. Finish it. Lorenzo stared down at him. The man who'd betrayed him, who'd hurt Katie, who'd tried to destroy everything he'd built. He should pull the trigger. He wanted to pull the trigger. But Katie's voice echoed in his mind. You're better than the men who came before you. Lorenzo lowered his weapon. No, he said quietly. You're not worth it. He turned and walked away, leaving Minjae bleeding on the ground. Behind him, he heard Minjae's bitter laugh turn into a cough. You're weak, Lorenzo. You always were. Lorenzo didn't look back. Maybe, but I'm the one still standing. He pulled out his phone and called the police, reporting the location and Minjae's condition. Then he ran back toward the warehouse, toward Katie, praying he wasn't too late. Katie woke in a hospital room 3 days later. The first thing she registered was beeping. Soft, rhythmic. Medical equipment. Then light, filtered through curtains, gentle and warm. Then pressure on her hand. A solid, familiar weight. She blinked slowly, vision clearing, and turned her head. Lorenzo sat in a chair beside her hospital bed, his elbows resting on the mattress, one hand wrapped around hers. His head was lowered like he'd been praying or falling apart or both. He looked exhausted. His jaw was shadowed with stubble. His shirt was wrinkled. There was a bandage visible under his collar where Minjae's bullet had grazed him. Lorenzo, Katie whispered. Her voice came out cracked and weak. His head shot up immediately. For a moment, he just stared at her, eyes raw with emotion, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jump. And then he exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and pain. You're awake, he said, voice rough. She managed a small smile. Barely. He stood and leaned over her carefully, pressing his forehead to her hand. You scared me. I scared you. Katie's laugh came out weak. I got shot. Because you tried to save me, he said, voice shaking. You put yourself in front of a bullet. You would have done the same for me, she whispered. He lifted his head and looked at her. Really looked, like he was trying to memorize every detail of her face in case it disappeared again. I never should have let you go, he said. I never should have doubted you. That file, Minjae, all of it, it was a setup. I fell for it, and you almost died because of my stupidity. Katie swallowed, her throat dry. Lorenzo, you were scared. You wanted to protect me. I understand that. No, he said firmly. I hurt you. And I don't mean the kidnapping or the bullet. I hurt you long before that. I looked at you like you were a threat when you were the best thing that ever happened to me. She didn't deny it. The memory of that morning still ached. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, still holding her hand. Katie, listen to me. When I saw you on that chair with Dusick holding a gun to your head, something inside me broke. Something I can't fix. He looked directly into her eyes. I can't lose you. Ever again. Not because of my world, not because of my mistakes, not because of anything. Her eyes softened. Lorenzo. He shook his head. Let me say everything. I need to say it all without holding back. She nodded. I've lived my entire life thinking people fall into 2 categories, he said quietly. Threats or people I need to protect. I never considered that someone could be more than that. But you, he paused, searching for words. You were everything at once. You confused me. You made me hesitate. And in my world, hesitation is deadly. So instead of trusting what I felt, I pushed you away. Katie blinked back tears. That hurt, Lorenzo. More than anything else. I know. His hand tightened around hers. And I'll never forgive myself for it. She took a shaky breath. Then why did you do it? He lowered his gaze. Because I've never cared about anyone the way I care about you. And that terrified me more than any enemy ever could. Her heart skipped. He lifted his eyes again, and the vulnerability in them took her breath away. I'm done being scared, Katie. I'm done pretending I don't feel what I feel. I'm done letting fear make my decisions. Katie swallowed the knot in her throat. So what happens now? Lorenzo brushed a strand of hair from her forehead with infinite gentleness. Now I spend the rest of my life making up for the fact that I hurt you. If you'll let me. And if I don't want you to spend your life apologizing? She asked softly. Then what do you want? She looked at him. This complicated, dangerous, beautiful man who'd torn down empires to bring her home. I want you to trust me. I want you to let me in. I want a partnership, not a protection detail. You have it, he said without hesitation. All of it. Whatever you want, it's yours. A tear slipped down her cheek. I want you, Lorenzo. Flaws and all. Scars and all. Past and all. His breath caught. Even after everything? Especially after everything, she said. Because you came for me. You believed me when it mattered. And you didn't kill Minjae even though you could have. Lorenzo's jaw tightened at the mention of his former friend. He's alive. In police custody. Facing charges for kidnapping, conspiracy, attempted murder. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Good, Katie said. That's better than him being dead. It means you're better than this world tried to make you. Lorenzo leaned down and kissed her forehead, soft, reverent, full of unspoken promises. I love you, he whispered against her skin. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it the night by the fire. But I'm saying it now, and I'll keep saying it until you believe me. Katie's tears fell freely now. I love you too. He pulled back just enough to look at her, searching her face. You mean that? Yes, she said, smiling through her tears. I think I loved you from the moment you let me pull you into that pool. A real laugh escaped him, short, surprised, genuine. That was the strangest night of my life. Mine too, she said. But I wouldn't change it. Neither would I. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just holding each other, grateful to be alive and together. Isabella knocked softly and peeked into the room, her face lighting up when she saw Katie awake. Oh, thank God. You're okay. Katie smiled weakly. Getting there. Isabella stepped inside, carrying a bag. I brought you clothes for when you're discharged. And snacks. Hospital food is terrible. She glanced at Lorenzo. Also, your brother hasn't left this room in 3 days. We've been bringing him food and threatening to sedate him if he didn't sleep. Lorenzo shot his sister a warning look. Isabella. What? It's true. She set the bag down and approached the bed. Katie, I'm so glad you're safe. You're family now. Which means you're stuck with us. Katie's chest warmed. I think I'm okay with that. Katie stood at her new desk in a small corner office inside Lorenzo's tower. Part of the hotel's marketing division, working on campaigns that had nothing to do with crime or danger or bullets. It felt surreal. Normal. Safe. She'd healed slowly. Physical therapy for her shoulder. Nightmares that woke her in cold sweats until Lorenzo held her and reminded her she was safe. Slowly, carefully, she was putting herself back together. And Lorenzo was there for every step. One evening, Isabella appeared in her office doorway with a mischievous grin. You have plans tonight? Katie looked up from her laptop. Not really. Why? Because my brother asked me to make sure you were something nice. Katie raised an eyebrow. Why? Isabella just winked. You'll see. And trust me, we're something that'll make his brain malfunction. That night, when Katie returned to the penthouse, the lights were dim. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Candles flickered on the balcony. Lorenzo, she called. Up here. She followed his voice to the rooftop terrace. The same rooftop where they'd met. The city stretched below them, lights shimmering in every direction like fallen stars. The pool glowed that same electric blue, casting familiar pink and purple reflections across the marble deck. Lorenzo stood near the edge, hands in his pockets, wearing a black shirt open at the collar. Her heart skipped. You wanted to see me? She asked, stepping closer. Yes. He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Come here. She walked to him and stood beside him at the railing. The night air was cool. The city hummed below. Lorenzo looked down at Sol for a long moment before speaking. I've been thinking about what you said. About trust. About partnership. About building something real. She tilted her head. And he took her hand gently. Katie Williams, I want you in my life. Not because I need to protect you, though I always will. Not because you're convenient or safe, because you're neither of those things. He smiled slightly. I want you because you're the first person who's made me feel something real in this world. Her breath hitched. He continued, reaching into his pocket. You said you didn't want a cage. I don't want one either. So I'm asking you. He opened a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, timeless. Katie covered her mouth with her hand, tears already forming. To build something with me, he said softly. A life, a future, a partnership where we make decisions together, where we trust each other, where we're equals in every way that matters. He stepped closer until their foreheads almost touched. You don't have to say yes tonight, Lorenzo said. You don't owe me anything. You can take your time. You can wait. But I want you to know one thing, and I want to say it clearly so there's no misunderstanding. He looked directly into her eyes. I love you, he whispered, and I'm done pretending I don't. Katie's tears finally fell. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him close. I love you too. He froze for a second, as if he didn't believe it. Then he held her tightly, arms around her waist, face buried in her shoulder. After a long moment, she pulled back and looked at the ring again. You said I can say yes tonight? She asked. Yes, he whispered. She smiled through her tears. Then yes. Lorenzo exhaled, a shaky breath, almost disbelieving, and kissed her. Slow, deep, full of everything they'd survived and everything they'd become. Below them, the city kept moving. But up here on the rooftop where it all began, two people who never expected to find love in the middle of danger held each other like the world finally made sense. Katie touched his cheek. One more thing. Anything. No more calling me a weakness. He smirked. Never again. She smiled. Good. Because you're mine now. He pulled her closer. Only yours. And with the city lights shining below and Lorenzo's arms around her waist, Katie realized something undeniably true. She wasn't living in a cage. She was living exactly where she chose to be. And that's it. That's their story. Katie pulled a stranger into a pool and ended up finding love in the most dangerous place possible. Lorenzo learned that the greatest strength isn't control, it's trust. If you made it this far, thank you for taking this journey with me. This story wouldn't exist without readers like you. Now I need you to do 3 things. Keycap 1, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I have more stories coming that you won't want to miss. Keycap 2, drop a comment below and tell me, what was your favorite moment in this entire series? Team Lorenzo or team, he should have groveled more? Should I write a bonus epilogue showing their wedding? Eyes. Keycap 3, where in the world did you experience this story? Your bedroom at midnight? Your morning commute? A coffee shop? A quiet park? I love knowing where these words found you. Drop your location below. Thank you for reading. Thank you for caring about Katie and Lorenzo. Thank you for being here. Until the next story.